Hi guys, it's April 20th, 2020. I'm Mark Koenigsberg, and today we're talking about Bitcoin halving. More specifically, the block reward halving. So there's a lot of talk about, Bitcoin's going to halve, and not a lot of people understand what exactly is going to happen, or what it means, or for those who do, what exactly is going to be the impact when such a thing happens. So, quickly, a couple of updates. As you can see, the hair is growing. I'm going to keep it. I think it's time to cut the sides again. It's definitely starting to look a little bit ridiculous. But as the corona lockdown continues, for the moment, I'm going to keep letting this Wazlawox mohawk go, and we'll see where it ends up. Bitcoin trading around $7,200 at the moment. And we're 3 weeks out from the Bitcoin halving. At the moment, we are scheduled for May 11th or 12th for the block reward to halve. So let's talk about what it actually means. And I'm not going to get deeply technical into what happens, but very simply, the reward that miners get for mining Bitcoin is going to halve, meaning miners will get half as much new Bitcoin every block. And why mining exists in Bitcoin and what it does and what exactly the block reward is meant to do is, it's for a different discussion, but you can think about it as new Bitcoin being printed. Basically, every 10 minutes roughly, new Bitcoin are printed by the network. And when Bitcoin started, that was 50 Bitcoins, roughly every 10 minutes. In 2012, at the end of 2012, that halved to 25 Bitcoins. And in the middle of 2016, I think around July, it halved to 12.5 Bitcoins, which is where we are right now. So right now, roughly every 10 minutes, 12.5 Bitcoins, new Bitcoins, are created. Now, technically, the Bitcoin block reward halving happens every 210,000 blocks, which is roughly every 4 years. But if you've been paying attention, end of 2012, July 2016, and May 2020, we're slightly ahead of the 4-year mark. And this continues for all of the Bitcoin that are going to be minted. And what this means is the new Bitcoin that are created roughly every 10 minutes. So let's think about it for a second, right? Basically, every 10 minutes, new Bitcoin are mined, printed, found, discovered, however you want to look at it. Again, the point of this isn't to be technical, it's just to understand the impact. And they're released out into the world. So at the moment, 12.5 Bitcoins every 10 minutes. So that works out to 75 Bitcoins every hour, works out to 1,800 Bitcoin a day. So at the moment, 1,800 Bitcoin are created every single day. But 3 weeks from now, when we reach, the next halving, that number will drop to 6.25 new Bitcoins every 10 minutes, which means for the first time we're going to see less than a Bitcoin every minute. We're going to have 37.5 Bitcoins every hour, so less than a Bitcoin a minute as opposed to now, and a total of 900 Bitcoin a day. When it halves again in roughly 4 years, it will halve then once more and end up with 450 new Bitcoins a day. So let's summarize quickly, and then let's talk about why this matters. And especially if you aren't involved in Bitcoin, or you don't care about Bitcoin. So firstly, learn about Bitcoin. But if you aren't involved in Bitcoin and don't care about it, this actually has an effect on you as well. And the question you should be asking is, why the hell should I care how many Bitcoin there are if I don't care about Bitcoin? Great question, and I'll answer it. So, quick summary. Every 10 minutes, roughly, new Bitcoin are created. At the moment, we have 12.5 created every 10 minutes, which means 1,800 new coins a day. And in 3 weeks' time, that number's going to halve, so that we'll have 900 new Bitcoins created every day. Now, historically, when Bitcoin has halved, the price has gone up afterwards. and it has not gone up immediately. There's usually a lag of a couple of months, but after that we generally see a rise to new price levels. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think in the first halving, Bitcoin was around $12 a coin. The second halving, I think, was around $650 a coin. And, well, the third halving now, we're sitting, at the moment about $7,200 a coin. But, after the first halving, it hit $100 for the first time. And after the second halving, not the first time, but it hit again then $1,000 after the whole Gox debacle. So there's a lot of talk about whether the price will go up again after this halving and whether we'll see new all-time highs. A lot of people looking at that $10,000 level, and can we go back above it? Now, this is very, very important, the fact that it's halving. And even for people who aren't involved in Bitcoin, because it brings about the discussion of scarcity. And especially in the current macroeconomic environment, amidst the corona and government stimulus and, the potential world recession or slowdown or whatever else that we're in or is coming, to have a financial asset that is based on scarcity in the true sense of the word, and that has a deflationary monetary policy that is reducing supply, is exactly the opposite of what's happening with global currencies. So not only has it raised the idea of scarcity, and potentially a lot more people learn about this, and it drives value in the form of price to Bitcoin, as we've seen in previous halvings, but there is, for the first time ever, an incredible juxtaposition between Bitcoin as a currency. World is in trouble financially, less Bitcoins are being created. Let's reduce supply. Let's really make this worth something. That's the idea. Versus, say, the dollar, where, there's a problem, things aren't working, world economy is in trouble, let's print more money. Which, to a lot of people seems great because there's more money available, but for people who understand the large economics at play here, is essentially devaluing the currency. So, I want to talk a little bit about the monetary supply rules of Bitcoin for a second, for those who don't understand. So, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins. At the moment, 18 million of those have been found, mined, printed, and the rest will come out every 10 minutes. Until the end of Bitcoin's release cycles. And the rate at which they're printed was set on the first day when Bitcoin was turned on by Satoshi. He said that for the first roughly 4 years, 50 coins would come out every 10 minutes. And then for the next 4 years, 25 coins would come out every 10 minutes. And now 12.5, and from 3 weeks from now, 6.25, and on and on and on. That is the definition of scarcity, and digital scarcity and known digital scarcity. We know exactly how many Bitcoins there are at any given moment in time. We can count them. We know how many there will be on any projected date. We know how many there will ever be in total. Now, in that way, it's very similar to gold, because gold has a finite supply. We can't make more gold just because we want to. Despite many movies and alchemist claims to the contrary, gold is a fixed and finite supply, and that's what gives it its value as a commodity. Money, on the other hand, the dollar, euro, whatever else, is not fixed supply. The government decides how much money there is, decides when they want to print more money, and there's no limit on how much they can print. As I've said in previous live streams, and as we've seen recently, if there's a problem and things are not going well financially, we'll just print money. We'll just print more money and more money and more money. And a lot of people think this is great, because the government is the decider of money and what it's worth and where it comes from. But that's not really true. The government is the decider of many things about money, and it is the decider of how much money there'll be. But really what it's worth is decided in the larger market and decided by people. And what gives fiat currency its value in real terms is a belief by the people that it is worth something. And specifically buying power equal to the number that's denoted on any note. So printing more and more actually means that all the money that existed before the printing is worth less. In comparison to that, printing less Bitcoin over time, and having less new Bitcoins come out every day arguably means that all the Bitcoins that existed before that are now worth more, because we get used to the rate of supply. Any economic market will seek equilibrium between supply and demand. That's the basis of any macroeconomic theory. And generally we stay at equilibrium. It may shift or move a little bit, but generally there is an equilibrium between supply and demand, at least in a free market, right? So we are used to the supply of any given thing, whether it's gas or oil or the amount of trees or school uniforms or textbooks or masks for corona or whatever it is. We are generally used to, as consumers, the supply of something, and the price we're willing to pay for something is a function of how much we want something, how easy it is to get hold of. So when demand goes up a lot, then supply has to go up a lot to keep the price the same, which is exactly what we saw with the mask when it came to corona. Not a lot of people were actually buying masks before corona. So, there was a steady supply of masks, relatively steady demand of masks. Then all of a sudden, the whole world wanted masks. So the demand went up very quickly, very dramatically. And the supply didn't go up as fast, which meant they were hard to get hold of. People were willing to pay more for them. So the same is essentially true of currency. So now you have Bitcoin, and you can get new Bitcoin, or the market can get new Bitcoin every 10 minutes, 12 and a half of them. But from 3 weeks' time, only half the new amount of Bitcoins are going to be created. So, half the Bitcoins that are being created every day now will stop being created. So if the same amount of people still want Bitcoins as wanted, the day before, then it's going to be harder to get those Bitcoins. So the theory is that should drive up the price. And this monetary policy was built into Bitcoin from the beginning, and a large part of the reason it's there is to drive up the price over time. As more and more people use it, less and less is needed to be created. Its value goes up from a price perspective. The buying power of every coin or piece of coin increases, and it can keep printing less and less, lower rate, until all the Bitcoins are released, which will happen in about 2140. So it gives you an idea, the first 18 million out of 21 released in 10 years roughly, and it will take more than 100 years to release the remaining less than 3 million, right? That is the effect of reducing the supply of a currency. Whereas you look at something like the dollar, and you look at parents or grandparents, when I was your age, we could go to the bioscope, we could go to movies, and for 1 penny, for a dime I could buy a house, or for 5 cents I could buy a meal. What does that show, other than laughing and making jokes about our parents that walked to school through the snow, which completely unrelated and funny story is when myself and my brothers were kids, we were laughing at my dad telling all his stories about when I was a kid. Turned around, we said to him, best when you were a kid you walked to school through the snow, which he actually did. So yeah, that didn't work out so well. But the point is that we can buy less things today with the same number of money, same amount of money, right? $1 buys less today than $1 bought 10 years ago. $10 today, not a lot of money. $10 5 years ago, more. $10 50 years ago, a lot of money. And that is the nature of inflationary currency. Currency that essentially becomes worth less over time, right, for many reasons, including printing more and more money, which actually means that the same amount of things are bought with a larger amount of money. Therefore, that amount, each dollar of that money is worth less because more of it is being spent to the same end. So that is the nature of fiat currency, and the nature of the dollar is that in a year from now it will be worth less than it is today. In 10 years now, the same number of dollars will be worth less than they are today, which is why people focus so much on interest and earning money and compound interest in the bank. Because if you put your money under a mattress and in 50 years' time you give that to your grandchildren, it will be worth probably not much. So Bitcoin is exactly the opposite. So I've threatened many times to say why you should care about this, even if you're not in Bitcoin. So why you should care is because, firstly, one of the things that happens around the time of the halvings is not only usually an increase in price, but it's an increase in people that are aware about Bitcoin. But more specifically, people that get interested in the mechanism where the supply is reduced over time. The rate of supply. This deflationary mechanism, which doesn't exist in normal currency, becomes a great entry point for people to learn about Bitcoin. So learn about Bitcoin. But that means that more people are introduced to Bitcoin after the halving. This is something we've seen historically, and I believe will be true again this time, because people are like, what do you mean Bitcoin halved? Does it mean stock split, like Microsoft splits shares? Does it mean every coin is worth half? These are the type of questions that come around when we start seeing things in the news about the halving, people talking about it. People want to understand what it is. And percentage of people that then understand that it gets produced at a slower and slower rate, they're like, wait a minute, this is very interesting, I want to understand this. And every halving leads to a new segment of the population, a new percent of people who wake up and realize what Bitcoin is. And that's incredibly, incredibly good for everyone. But what is very different this time, and I suspect is going to have more of an effect in terms of also education about Bitcoin, but also frustration at the current governments, is that this is going to be a halving that is happening in the middle of a global financial crisis. A month from now, roughly, and a couple months after that, once the halving is being spoken about and the effects starting to be felt, we will still be in the midst of financial difficulties as a result of Corona. I think people will have a better understanding of how far-reaching some of these are going to be, and there's going to be probably larger frustration at government and international monetary policy makers, right? And there's only so far you can keep printing stimulus money before it really starts to hurt. So you're going to have people frustrated at the financial situation. And for the first time, what is being done by these people to supposedly solve the problem, like the big bailouts we saw in 2008, too big to fail, like these banks, subprime loans, screw everyone over, like CEOs get big bonuses and the government bails out the banks. And not a lot of people understood in 2008 that they, as a taxpayer, were essentially bailing out these banks for having, put them at risk. So the taxpayer loses, real money, real assets, real security, and then has to foot the bill somewhere for bailing out the people that did it to them. Not a lot of people understand how bad this was. But this time, in 2020, in the middle of Corona, why you should care about the Bitcoin halving, even if you don't care about Bitcoin, is a much larger group of people are going to realize how bad government financial policy is during this crisis, not only because the effects are being felt in real time, but because there happens to be the example of Bitcoin doing exactly the opposite at exactly the same time. So to realize and see, through the smoke and mirrors and understand what's going on underneath, not always easy, but substantially easier when right next to it, on the same stage, is an example of someone doing exactly the opposite without the smoke and mirrors. So I suspect that within the next few months, you're going to have more and more people asking a very simple question, which is, why the hell does the government think it can solve financial problems by printing more and more money? Or even simpler, wait, if the government keeps printing money, where is all this money coming from? Or if the government can print as much money as it wants, why should I be paying taxes? Or if I am paying all these taxes while the government can print as much money as it wants, what rights or benefits should I be enjoying in times of difficulty that I'm not currently? A lot of similar questions to this. And this is just about the current financial system. I'm not talking about the people who turn around and say, okay, well, look at the alternative, look at Bitcoin, or what is monetary policy. I'm just saying people turn around saying, I'm not happy with the people who are determining my financial future at a macroeconomic level. And I think that some of the protests we saw in 2008, or following with the EU failures like in Cyprus and Greece and things like this, I think that we're going to see a repeat in some way or form of the same. Social unrest is of itself not a good thing, but it is very often a result of a failing somewhere and can lead to positive change. So I'm not suggesting or advocating for social unrest or wanting it to happen, but I am predicting that, or at least suggesting that I believe a lot more people are going to be unhappy about the government and the way this crisis is being handled, from a health and from a financial perspective, because the effects are going to be felt, and doubly because there's going to be the example and talk about how there's this crazy thing, Bitcoin, that is doing it differently. That doesn't mean everyone will hear about it or even understand it or have a monetary policy discussion. But it takes one person to understand there is an alternative to the system, to be able to suggest that there could be an alternative. Even if you can't explain that then spreads, these circles of reality. And in most groups of friends or family or some sort of colleagues in work environment, there is a person who understands economics. There is a person who's heard about Bitcoin, and I think this halving is going to see a lot more people really waking up and asking why the government is doing it the way it is, and also asking why more people aren't interested in Bitcoin. And remember, primarily, always, it's learn about Bitcoin. That's my message. Learn about Bitcoin. I'm not telling you buy, don't buy. Just learn about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a great, great thing to understand to whatever way you can. Take a few minutes. And please subscribe to my video. Please share this video. I am looking for discussion, and I am looking to grow an audience, and I appreciate every single person that watches my live streams and all the comments I get afterwards from everyone, so thank you very much. And I'm asking, if you enjoyed this, or you watched a few minutes, or you're still watching after 20 something minutes of me ranting on like a crazy person, please share. Send this to one person, send this to a friend, share it on Twitter, on Facebook, on social media. Help me to grow the audience so that I can help to spread the word in a good and positive way about Bitcoin and its potential for transformative good in our society. So to summarize very quickly, roughly 3 weeks from now, around the 11th or 12th of May, the Bitcoin block reward will halve, meaning that half as much new Bitcoin is created every day. I have 900 coins created a day instead of the current 1800. Traditionally, that drives up price within a few months because you have less being created and the same amount of people that want. We also find ourselves in the middle of a financial crisis globally, so I think that will cause a lot more people to question and to learn about Bitcoin, which I think will drive even more demand than usual, but also increase the level of frustration at the current financial system. So what is the takeaway here? Thank you very much for watching. Please share this, subscribe to YouTube if you haven't, follow me on Library or any of the other channels that I'm on, follow me on Twitter, send your questions, tell me where you agree, tell me where you disagree, tell me to get a haircut. I see a couple of the comments coming through now, so thank you. And as always, learn about Bitcoin, stay safe, take Corona seriously, and until next time, I'm Mark Koenigsberg, and you're watching another live stream about Bitcoin.